says preparing, setting up your webinar. Perfect. Okay, so it says we're live now. All right, so today is May 29, 2025. Thanks everyone for joining. And yeah, let's see what people are. Oh, what is an echo? How do we get rid of that? There we go. Okay, so let's start with the build issues under issue number 4086. First one would be requiring physical 2FA for build work group and web info members. Sorry,
we did
guys.
chat about that one last time.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything more to say on it. Like, I don't know if there's.
Yeah, my recollection was that we collectively were asking if any other projects had a experience of doing this and whether there were, downsides, upsides to this. And I think there was a little bit more stuff in the issue 3 weeks ago, but I don't know it's moved particularly further.
Yeah, I think I remember like there's some people that there was some confusion in that, like somebody said, oh, here's some projects that enforce 2FA, which we've already done. We were more specifically like, and required hardware.
Yeah. So, we, for a long time, the Node.js org does require two-factor authentication, but this proposal is to go even further and say, for a subset, including like build and maybe the website maintainers, that in addition to being two-factor authentication, it should actually be hardware-based, instead of just soft, I guess, two-factor. But yeah, it's.
I mean, I think if anything, we could retitle the issue to encourage or strongly encourage, or because I don't think require is something that we can actually enforce or even know if it's being enforced. But make it a cultural mindset as opposed to a any sort of requirement.
I would still go back to, though, like if we were willing to say it's a requirement, like we trust people to do what we ask, right? So like,
sure,
we could still say it is a requirement if we thought that was the right thing to do. But I don't know, from our discussion, I think we're more on the, we don't want to force people to do it, but we'd be happy to encourage it.
That great MFA project from the OSSF, David Wheeler is a Linux Foundation employee who is very involved with that. I can ask him what the state of that is, if there's still TFA tokens available, like if we can get them for free, that would be at least some progress forward on, eliminating one barrier of asking people to buy one.
That sounds like a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it was that program or some other program. We did get a few tokens for the Node project. I seem to think that was more around like NPM at the time, but I actually have a physical token. I've just never really set it up to do anything. So I've got one that was through one of these programs, but yeah, they're not that straightforward to use. I guess that's why it's more secure to use them. But yeah, it's it would definitely probably discourage the amount of interventions that I just drop in and do.
Yeah. They're less straightforward to set up, but I feel like once they're set up, they're pretty invisible unless you're like trying to commit code on your phone or something. Then it becomes sort of
Yeah.
awkward.
Well, I
But
mean, I'm going to have to reinstall this machine that I normally work on anyway, so I'm not going to be doing anything in the next few weeks to set this up because I'll have to do it all over again.
right, right.
Set up,
Well,
so
it all ends up being not on your machine at all. It's just all ends up being set up on the
yeah.
key card itself, and then once it's ready. But
Yeah,
in
for
any
me,
case,
like the challenge is that it would have to be for everything because like I probably have like 20 different machines I use across, 3 or 4 different hardware machines, and your token can't be plugged into them all, right?
I mean, are you physically moving to different machines, or are you like VMing in remotely into them, and that's the
I have probably like 5 physical machines, and across those 5 machines, I have like 20 virtual machines.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and that does become complex because even myself, I use Windows as like my main operating system. And then I have
Yep.
various Linux VMs on the insides, and
Yep.
extending the USB into those VMs has been sort of a series of additional extra steps. So it does add a layer of complication. So I think again, given all these, it still sounds to me like require is too strong of a policy, and strongly encourage and highly recommend and make a best effort to use these because they're more secure feels more like a better
Right. Yeah.
mandate to me. Just,
Sounds good. So like we could comment to that in the issue, basically saying, from the discussion, the team seems comfortable in recommending but not requiring.
mhm.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Okay. Do you guys see my screen, by the way? I've shared it, so
We
I was
do.
wondering.
We do now.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Because I realized it was shared in another meeting, but not this. So yeah. All right. So anything else on this? Nope. All right. Moving on to the next one. Potentially transition to 1Password for secret management.
I had opened this one up as sort of a changing the infra from using our current secrets repo, which has some challenges. Change management's hard to track. Offboarding is hard to do. An update since then is a colleague of mine made me aware of the fact that 1Password vaults do stay on your machine, and they do stay in a state where if you got offboarded from something and your 1Password doesn't sync, then you still have all those keys. So it suffers from the same offboarding scenario that I had proposed that the current .gpg Git repo does. So that doesn't actually solve that, but it does point to the underlying issue, which I think Richard brought up last time, which is that rotating the secrets that are in there more often is where we should focus our energy and not be focusing on swapping out a technology that changes little. So I think
Yeah.
I think we might want to just close that and or change the title to be focused on rotation and figure out rotation schedules for things.
Just to be clear, I'm not opposed to moving things to 1Password if that makes it easier to manage. I just didn't think that the the issue around offboarding people and then them still having access to keys, that wouldn't solve that. This change wouldn't solve that issue, which is what you've alluded
Correct.
to.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
we have
not.
one issue, which is rotation. This isn't going to solve that, but this may, we may want to do this for other reasons, but not that reason. If that makes sense.
I think the primary value of one password is that we've got some change management where we have an audit log where we can see that this password, when was the last time it was rotated, and you can actually look and see the last time something got edited or changed. There is an audit log inside, so it's a little bit helpful. It's mildly better. Is it what we need to focus on right now? Is it something we need to put effort into, or is it we have higher priorities? That's
I mean, I guess it's probably easy to see in that audit log. I mean, the secrets repo we've got is a Git repo, and you do have Git history, and then it all depends on what people have put in the commit messages and things as
true.
Yeah, but if there are good reasons to move to one password, then we can do that separately of the like you said, focus more on maybe the rotation side, because that's probably where the biggest risk is, and then switching to one password is more of a kind of a quality of life type change rather than a security type change.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. My thought is like one password is a little bit easier for people to use versus having to set up the other stuff.
I think I definitely agree for if it's a password to log into like DigitalOcean or to log into Cloudflare, then it makes total sense then to have that in something like one password. It's much easier to look up. I think I'm probably more neutral on like whether actually storing the SSH keys in one password is better or worse, because ultimately we'll still need to use something like Ansible or some other sort of automation to deploy those onto the machines.
Yeah, that comes back to like, can we get those from one password or not? Like
but yeah, I mean, like I said, it depends where you want to focus.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. Like it might be better in some ways, but like there's no burning. It's just it's not necessarily a top priority.
Yeah,
and I think we did move the npm account password to one password, so I think that's there now and not in the secrets repo. So we can do piecemeal.
Certainly accounts that have 2FA, like it has. Anyway, we don't need to go into the advantages, disadvantages. Like I think for me, it's like it could make sense, but whether it's the top priority, not necessarily. And
well, on that, can we? I would like to leverage. I mean, I like with the TFA and stuff. That is very handy, and pulling the secret key out of the admin logins markdown file that's encrypted, and then adding that to your own one password and things like I would like to be able to leverage one password for those sorts of things, like Richard said, for the build working group. And right now, I think it's not a build working group owned tool; it's a PSC owned tool. So, can we create a build working group subfolder, substructure, whatever in that tool, and give us access, and we can kind of move some of that stuff over?
we can definitely create a vault.
Yeah.
And that vault can be assigned to, like, we can decide, the TSC will have access to all of it, which is
Sure.
which is fine. But then we can give as owners, but we can then give individuals access to particular vaults. Like we do that for, say, managing the Zoom.
Yeah, so I think that was the question mark, as to at the moment the general TSC do not have access to these secrets. And even if the vault was technically only owned by Build, as organization owners, any TSC member could theoretically still read things out of the vault. Now we may decide as a project that that's okay, but it is a widening of access to those secrets that I think we want to consciously be doing, and not not we've transferred everything and now we've actually widened the access to those things. So again, I don't fundamentally object, but I do think that needs to be a very conscious. Yes, we are aware that we are potentially allowing more people to see these secrets, and have more people will then have access to these accounts and things.
Yeah, and some of them are the admin console for the whole thing,
exactly.
and gives you full access to everything. So
yeah. So this is just like, I think we should be careful here. Like,
yeah,
I'm not saying we never do it, but we need to make sure that if we do this, then it's a very, we have our eyes open and we know what we're doing, and not that we've accidentally opened this up to a lot more people than we
Right.
comfortable with.
Okay. I think Michael's still taking notes. Going to the next one, transitioning from Keylocker to Azure Trusted Signing.
Yes. Our DigiCert Keylocker is running out of signatures. It's expensive, like to the tune of $5,000 a year. And we have another infrastructure that the OpenJS is providing for Azure Trusted Signing, which is happening in the OpenJS Azure account. We have got it configured and set up as a trusted authority to allow the OpenJS Foundation to sign code on behalf of projects. This is now all the keys and environment variables have been handed out and configured in the release workflow. So those environment variables exist. And if there was a PR this morning, I believe, that Stefan put into the node project to change everything over to it. So as soon as that PR lands, we'll be on the new stuff and we can close this. So, yeah. And there's a couple of Git tests that show that it worked and it signed. And I did have a question on the timing of the cert, but because the certs expired, but they're time-stamped signatures, so it should work. But they're good for 3 days, which means tomorrow I can check to find out whether that first one signed right.
I did label the pull request because we'll need to make sure that that lands on all the release lines. Obviously, we'll do the current Node 24 first and then roll it out slowly to the other release lines. But yeah, that we want to be on the same signing infrastructure for all the releases.
Okay, I see. Okay, perfect. There you go. Thank you. Anything else on this? Nope. All right, moving on. Replace works on ARM machines affected by Equinix Metal Sunset. Okay.
Yeah, so I sent an email in April and didn't get a response, so I sent a follow-up today and I got a response to the follow-up. And it's just more or less confirmed that we will get a replacement. Well, yeah, we can get a replacement for the Ultra the Ultra set we've got at Equinix Metal. And that's all I know at the moment. So there's more to be figured out on this front as to like where those will be and what the time frame for those will be. But the intent is there that we'll get replacements for these machines. I just am no clear at the moment as to what the timeline for all that is.
Well, that's great news in terms of like the minimal impact, right? We don't have to go searching for somebody to provide them. We just need to get them. So I guess you can ask them.
That's my hope, yeah. So it's obviously going to be sponsored through the Works On program, and then presumably be one of these other providers that they have resources at. I still don't know which of those others and whether they're waiting for us to decide, or we just say to them, just give us one somewhere.
I would just ask them like, okay, what's the next step for actually?
That's what I literally in my email said, what's the next step?
Okay, perfect.
And the response didn't actually indicate the next step. It just said, yes, you'll get a replacement. So the answer was, the intent is there, but like the actual concrete's like, what are the steps that we need? So I guess I'll try and follow that up again, but
sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one is infrastructure for Orca 2024 and beyond.
This one we should probably close this issue out, call it done. We're happily running on Orca now. We do need to start up on the next set of images because we are currently there's another issue that is build out the Mac OS infra. Build out the Mac Xcode 15.3 so that we can use some new features that are being compiled in. And so we'll need to do that. And part of, the thing that was still kind of dangling on this was actually documenting some of the changes that I had to make the release machines. And given that I'll have to do that again with these new ones, that'll probably come as part of while I'm going back through that and be like, okay, how did I do this again? I'm going to be, taking all my notes and everything that I stored that I was going to turn into documentation, that'll get turned into documentation as I do the next step.
All right. And anything else on this?
No, I think that's all
All right.
there.
Next one would be new machine requirements, replacement for Equinix x64 servers.
Yes. There was one final outstanding machine that I had been sort of hesitant to touch just because of its oldness and kind of felt like one of those machines that was underpinning a lot of stuff. I've since reached out to the web team a little bit and understand, and I can see I have a new machine built. I have built it in the OpenJS Azure account. I was having difficulty provisioning a new machine at MNX, who had originally offered to host this machine, and we actually have kind of a lot of budget over at Azure for this in our OpenJS account. It's a different account than the Node.js Azure account, so there might be some confusion there as far as Microsoft granting us credits in the future, because I believe they were trying to grant all of OpenJS inclusive of Node.js credits, but we already have an account, and it's not easy to move everything. So we'll have to talk to them about what we're doing here. But it is in another account. It is set up. It works. I had it working Friday. I did not want to deploy it on a Friday. I should probably deploy it today, so I'm not deploying it on a Friday again. Talking to the web team, we're thinking we can probably remove the load balancer situation, because right now the Cloudflare workers will fall back on Origin, and Origin is the load balancer that then distributes load equally between the unencrypted server and the web server. It doesn't fall back very often. It hasn't fallen back in months. And so it's a backup to the backup system that I don't think is entirely necessary. So what I'd like to do is get rid of that. But for the time being, it'll still be there and it should work. Ultimately, I would like to remove this machine entirely, this unencrypted machine, because the other issue is it's just an rsync server dangling out on the internet with no SSL or anything, nothing encrypted at all. So whatever mirrors are happening, it's vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks. It's vulnerable to, there's all sorts of things where it's like, I'm just not sure that this is the best service to be offering. When it was provisioned, it said it would be going away in 2022, and all of the config files say that. And when you look at it, it's so it's long in the tooth, but it's still being used. So I didn't want to just shut it off and make people angry without some sort of communication plan to be like, hey, this is definitely going away, so that we can have a better picture of understanding who's mirroring it, why, how much they rely on those mirrors, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so,
I think as a project we just don't know the answers to those questions.
Yeah,
we know people are going in, and like you said, you can see the logs, and it is being arsynced to mirrors. I think generally don't have a feel for who those are. I think there is some speculation. So I think we do know there have been mirrors in, for example, China, to do with like the Great Firewall and getting around that.
Yep.
But yeah, other than that, and like you said, there were messages on there that said, these were going right. But then if people are just arsyncing, maybe they'll just never see the messages.
Yeah, not many people index the rsync service to see what it says about the services. That's not most of the time you set up a mirror and you walk away.
I think we should, like you said, we need a communication plan, and possibly like including some brownouts where like we turn it off for a day, see who yells. It's a way to see if anybody is going to complain, and like, to the point, they should notice that versus they may not notice that we've said it's going to go away.
I think the only other proactive thing we might be able to do is there's a couple of issues in the build group where people are asking about, like, hey, the rsync service could maybe work better if it did this, or people that are on the original issue asking for it. We could just at them in that issue, so that anybody who seems to have shown interest in the past is at least flagged for awareness.
Makes sense.
But that's a long-term future thing. But for now, I think unencrypted should be able to be switched over. I should be able to shut off the final server at Equinix in that account, and then I will respond to Richard with my tail between my legs a year late, saying sorry. It's all done now.
That's all right. No, it's not me that's on the hook for.
No. The other.
The other. Oh, you mean
Richard
Ed,
Vilmetti, or is that his name?
Ed.
No,
Ed.
Ed. Sorry, not Richard.
Yeah.
Ed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sign and QA and other. Well, I have one topic I wanted to talk about. It's about upgrading our compilers. I haven't created an issue on this yet. I'm still experimenting and talking to V8 folks. So right now we are using GCC 12 on PPC and S390 and AIX. I believe probably on x86 as well, right? I guess Richard would know more on this.
Everywhere other than Macs. So the Macs use Xcode and end up using CLang.
Okay, okay.
And Windows is CLang now.
Okay, so you guys, I mean, they don't use MSVC anymore, right?
Yeah, Windows is CLang, but the Linuxes are all on GCC, as is SmartOS and AX.
Okay, actually, that's a good thing to know that some of the machines are using CLang or Clang right now. So last week, V8 folks created a CL to use STD format. So it's a new addition to C++. I think C++ 20, and it requires GCC 13 at a minimum. So we broke our builds, and I talked to them upstream, and they reverted it for now. It was also, I think, causing a few problems for them as well. So they just reverted the CL, and they said, "What's the outlook on this? How are we going to upgrade our compilers, and how often do we do it, and what's the plan here?" So I told them, I'll talk to our team internally and figure all this out, because we also have to work with Node.js infrastructure team to make sure they upgrade their compilers as well. So immediate plan right now is to soon, hopefully, upgrade to GCC 13. I haven't tested anything yet. I haven't opened an issue on it yet, but I just wanted to bring this up just so Richard and the rest of the folks have.
I think the biggest challenge is whether GCC 13 is actually available on some of these operating systems. I think the Linuxes should generally be okay, but SmartOS X, I don't know the answer to that, so we'd have to reach out.
For AIX, I talked to AIX folks, IBM AIX folks yesterday, and they don't have it available. They have to build it. But we have another issue, we're working on in parallel right now, and that's moving to Clang altogether. Okay, so I also haven't opened an issue on upstream, just upstream yet. It's just bringing it out right now.
Yeah, I think switching to Clang is another big discussion that has other implications. So it's not then just a question of what we're using to build Node. It's then a question of, is that going to affect people building add-ons? And I know Michael might know more about that. I think the add-on API community has looked at that in the past. I don't know if we have a definitive answer as to whether switching to CLang is going to cause compatibility issues with like older, pre-built binaries. If you were building everything from source, you're probably fine. But if you are, if you've got modules out there that have pre-built binaries, whether having things linking to different versions of the C runtime is not, I think even with Windows, there's been some question marks as to they have switched to Clang, but there's some questions about whether I think it's still linking to MSVC's C runtime, and they're running into some issues with like standard templates or something that V8 doesn't run into because they're not linking to that. So there's still some things to be sorted out on that front.
I was going to say on that front, I mean, I think we looked at it and the belief was it shouldn't necessarily be a problem, but Windows should be proving that out to us, right? Like if we don't see any issues on Windows, that's a good indicator.
It's probably early days, isn't it, for 24
Yeah.
to work out if that has actually caused an issue. But I mean, there has been, you know, it was a collaborator that were looking at some issues, and they said, you know, it is something to do with the templates in Visual Studio, and that's because even though we're using CLang, we're still linking to it. So
yeah, so I would say, like, you know, hopefully in a few months we'll have some better feedback on the Windows front if it had an effect.
Okay. But yeah, I think if you open an issue, we should have the discussions there, and then we just
I'll definitely do that.
For Node, I don't think it's going to be an issue. So we are unlikely to do like whatever version of V8 standard format does end up in, you know, or whatever ends up in. That's likely to be a Node 25 at the earliest thing. We wouldn't be backporting those versions of V8 into Node 24. So we're now forward looking and like planning for the next similar major of Node. And you know, this is as good a point as any to start that planning, especially if we need to look at, you know, if there are gaps, like if we need to lean on IBM to actually build a new compiler.
Yeah,
I imagine we want as much lead time as possible to ask them to do that.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, the reason I brought this up is because V8 stopped supporting GCC a while ago, and we are right now essentially becoming GCC porters. So there are a lot of commits, at least I guess once a week, that we have to fix build failures on GCC because Clang doesn't think it's an error, but GCC thinks it is. So we have to constantly patch things. So that will definitely fix that problem. And if we were using Clang 18, we didn't even need to upgrade to GCC 13 right now because it already supports SSD format. So I brought this up with the AX team as well, and I asked them, is it easier for you to upgrade to GCC 13 or use Clang? And they said GCC 13 for now is obviously easier. So immediate action would be to upgrade to GCC 13, and I'll create another issue for Clang just so we can get this, you know, discussions going. I'm fixing a bunch of bugs right now on S390 and PPC because if it's compiled with Clang, there are some test failures, so it's going to fix those. So down the road, we're also ready to be able to hopefully one day move to Clang. The V8 is also starting to use Rust very soon, so LLVM support is going to be mandatory anyways. Rust requires LLVM, so if LLVM is there, LLVM is supported, it should already be easier for us to just completely move to Clang. But again, there's a lot of research and testing is needed on Node itself before we can do something like that. So I'll create two separate issues, one for GCC 13 upgrade, another one for Clang. And yeah, we'll see how things go. I'm gonna make a note about all this here before making it PR. So stop sharing, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess one of the key issues for the Clang one is like, how do we maintain our libc level or whatever it is, compatibility level?
I think last time I looked, I have to confirm this. We have a LLVM toolset similar to how we have a GCC toolset. I think I have to double check this.
Okay, if that's the case, that would be a great answer.
If that's actually there and it is backward compatible like GCC is, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it might depend on platforms because I mean, even though Apple is CLang, I don't know that they're up to Clang 18, for example. I don't know what version of Clang they're on, but you know,
interesting.
I think there's always going to be a little bit of tension or mismatching between what V8's doing because they're just rolling, you know, their tool chains onto patch levels and whatever levels.
They use the latest all the time.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, we are on things that have been released for distros. You know, so Apple, for example, we're on whatever Xcode versions, and you know, Ryan alluded to earlier, that there's already been an ask to bump us up to another Xcode version, but I don't know that that might not be the latest one. But I don't know how high up Apple goes in terms of that Xcode versions. But presumably there's still going to be a mismatch where there's some lag between what a company like Apple or for us Red Hat, they release versions of things with operating systems. It's bound to be at a lower level than whatever's in the current Google Depot tools or whatever repository their development tools are now in. So yeah, it'll be something to try and figure out, I guess, as to how to balance those requirements.
Can't you? Can't Node use whatever compiler is provided by Depot tools, essentially Chromium, because they do support ARM, and I think they have.
Well, I think the issue is that we do not want to put a requirement at the moment that in order to build Node, you need to pull Depot tools down. So at the moment, upstream Node is if you pull Node down and you meet the compiler requirement and the Python requirement and make. So if you meet those three things, you can build Node, and you don't need to install any other dependency or tooling to build Node. So in that respect, it's fairly simple in terms of being, compared to other things in terms of what you needed to build Node. It's relatively simple, and at the moment, I think there would be resistance to saying you now need to pull like Depot tools down from Google. And I think that would cause problems for us anyway, wouldn't it? Because Depot tools doesn't actually contain like S390 ports of.
No, we have to build our own anyways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it complicates the build setup instructions for Node, which is kind of why we've avoided it as much as possible.
It makes maintenance easier, but I understand.
Yeah.
I understand your concern. Okay. But we need to upgrade to 13 anyways. That's coming. I think within the next few months. So I'll create an issue on that. I'll have to test 13 on our platforms. That's probably gonna have some failures, and I'll have to fix those. And yeah. Okay. Let me stop sharing this. And going back to here. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Michael's going? Nope. Perfect. Okay. Thank you for joining. I'm going to stop the recording. How do you stop recording? I guess. Nope, not there.